God's favorite.
Well, I'd have to know what do you really mean by that, because usually, depends on how you use it, I guess, but usually when you have the word favorite, it makes you above everyone else.
That's right.
And there is no second. I mean, you can't have two favorites.
And
favorite is a singular word.
He was not using it like that. And later on, he actually said he wasn't using it like that. So,
yeah, well, you know, that's the problem with language, is that you can say something, and the question is, how does the other guy hear that, or what does it mean to them?
yeah.
So, of course, that's true of everything. The Lord says things, people interpret it different ways.
Yeah, it was good though.
Yeah.
What he was saying was just trying to.
So what did he come out with? So he used the word favorite or whatever. Where'd he go with that?
He kept trying to emphasize to people that God really loves you. God really, really loves you.
Yeah.
And he had a lot of other things good to say too.
If you want, I have an extra one of those notes that I had from Sunday's Let's on the back seat there. It was concerning the number 5 and the 5th letter. Hey is the 5th letter, and 5 is Kamish. That means the number 5. And like everything, there's a tremendous lesson in all of that. You know, you take that number 5, Kamesh, and you spell it in Hebrew, it'd be spelled Ket Mem Esh. Or Sheen, I mean, not Esh. Esh, Sheen. And so you have Kamesh. You take the letter Ket, which is the first letter in Kamesh, is the 8th letter in the numbers, and 8 is a number of new beginnings.
Yeah.
Okay, so, but it literally means life. The letter Ket means life.
Look at that guy going around.
Yeah. So, Mem means water. Means more than that, but that's a prominent meaning of Mem, water. And Esh is fire. So, let's take those 3 letters. Ket, life. Mem, water, or to drink. And Esh, fire. So, in Isaiah, it says, the fool says, eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we die. So, life, drink, die. Literally, Kamesh says, eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we die. But that's what a fool says. But who wrote Kamesh?
The Lord.
So is God saying, eat, drink, tomorrow we die?
That's not his philosophy.
Remember, most words, letters have more than one meaning.
Yeah.
So that's one meaning. In the Hebrews and the Jews tradition, they often do a toast, and they'll say, L'chaim.
L'chaim, yeah.
What does l'chaim mean?
To life?
To life. Then they hold up their glass, click them together, and drink. And then they do it again to life, and they keep doing it until they're all stone drunk, you know. Had a great time. But you know, Chaim, they say means life, but it doesn't mean life. It's not what it means. Chet means life, but Chaim is Chet with an im on the end of it. When you put I-M on the end, or im on the end of any word, what does that do to it?
Makes it plural?
Well, we say plural, but it's our word. When we say in our language plural, what does plural mean?
More than one?
More than one, or usually two or more, right?
Yeah.
That's what we mean by it. But in Hebrew, it doesn't mean two or more. It means it just keeps on going. There's no end to it.
Like the waves.
Yeah. So, for example, Jerusalem. We say Jerusalem. In Hebrew, they say Yerushalayim.
Yeah.
What does that mean? Are there two Jerusalems?
No, but it's perpetual state.
Yeah. There is a temporary Jerusalem, or the one that's earthly, and there's one that goes on and on forever called the New Jerusalem. It doesn't mean you have two of what we got over there right now, but it means one of these is just a earthly Jerusalem. The very word Jerusalem means the city of peace. So you go to Jerusalem, is it the city of peace?
No.
Man, it's full of chaos, it's full of riots and murders and car bombings and threats and every other wild thing. So if you just had two of those, what would you have?
Twice as much
Twice
chaos.
as much as you got now.
Yeah.
But it doesn't mean that. See, Jerusalem means there is a everlasting Israel, which is depicted in Revelation as the New Jerusalem, the one that's Chaim, or Jerusalem. Another word is Elohim. What's Elohim mean?
God's.
God.
Or the God that keeps on going.
But it's got that im on the end. That doesn't mean there's more than one God. Some people would interpret
Watch
that
out
way.
for this guy on your flank over here.
I didn't see him. Good thing you mentioned. Thank you. So anyway, you don't have two gods, or you don't even have more than one God. You got one God. Then why would they call him Elohim?
Because he keeps going?
Yeah, he's eternal.
Yeah.
There's no end to him. He just goes on and on and on. The word for heavens is Hashamim, or Shamim. Shamim means heavens. Hashamim means the
heavens. Yeah.
Now, the is a singular word, isn't it? We don't say the, then you think, how many are you talking about?
One.
But Shamim is a multiple word. So how can you have a prefix that means one, the, talking about something that is on and forever? Strange, isn't it?
Yeah.
If you went in the grocery store and you got one bunch of grapes, you're getting one item, but what are you getting?
Grapes.
Are you getting one grape?
No, you get bunches.
Or you a bunch of bananas or something like that. So a singular prefix means it all comes as a unit, and yet it's something that goes on and on. For example, the universe, we think of as being made up of constellations all over the place, right?
Yeah.
All right. There's one universe, but how many constellations are there?
Lots of them.
Yeah, they even believe there to be thousands and thousands of constellations. Each constellation is composed of billions of stars, isn't it? Each star is consisted of a unit with perhaps planets whirling around it and
Yeah.
moons and things. And so you have one universe that's made up of many, many things, you know. Goyim. What does Goyim mean?
Many nations.
Yeah, the Gentiles. Now, Israel is one. You got one Israel, but you have many Gentile nations, don't you?
Yeah.
And so that word is a plural word. And it goes on like that. And again, we use the word plural. We mean two or more, but that's not what it means. It doesn't have anything to do with how many of them there is. It has to do with the fact that it just goes on and on and on, you know. So anyway, Chaim, we're talking about Lechaim. Chaim does not mean life.
I'm going to try a little bit of film.
Oh, yeah. But Ket means life. Ket.
Yeah.
And life just means something that's living. But Chaim means something that goes on and on and on. So a better definition of Chaim is everlasting life, isn't it? Now, when the Jews do their drinking toast and they say Lechaim, are they thinking of everlasting life?
No. Think of about the one right here.
Yes. So they're misusing the word, aren't they?
Yeah.
They're using a word, but they don't even know what it means, or they don't recognize it, or they're not using it correctly.
Right.
So it sounds good for them to say L'chaim, but they celebrate it by saying, literally, let's eat, drink, and be merry, because tomorrow it's over.
Yeah.
So what about everlasting life? That L'chaim does not mean everlasting life to them, does it? But that's really what the word means. So you have Kamesh. The first syllable of Kamesh, or the first letter, is Ket, which simply means to be alive. Mem means water. That's what you drink. Esh means fire or judgment. So can you see where Kamesh means eat, drink, and be merry. Tomorrow we die. A very, very futile, hopeless, sad word, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
But how about this? The first syllable of Kamesh is Ket, but Ket means new beginnings. So the word Chaim means not life, it means everlasting life. And there's a big difference between life and everlasting life, isn't there?
Mm-hmm.
Mem means water, but you remember, to the world, what does water mean?
Something you got to keep going back for.
Yeah, I remember the story of the Samaritan. You're going to that. The Lord said, you come out to Jacob's well to get water. Is there anything wrong with that water?
No.
No, it's perfectly good water. But there's something about it that's limited. It's only good for today, isn't it?
Right.
He said, you can get water today, you'll have to come back tomorrow, get some more, the day after that, the day after that. So it's only good for temporary. But the Lord said, if you ask me, I would give you water that would not be temporary. The water I'd give you, you'd never thirst again, because why? Different kind of water. What kind is it?
Everlasting water.
Yeah, living water.
Living water. Yeah.
So Kamesh means everlasting life because of the living water that he gives, and then ends in Ish, which really means fire. But fire, it can mean consuming or destroying, but also it can mean something good. For example, when Israel was led through the wilderness out of Egypt, the Lord had a column, a pillar of fire to lead them and to light their way. Was that there to punish them? Was it there to destroy them?
No, it's there to lead them.
It's to lead them. It really led them toward hope, and didn't it? When the apostles met in Jerusalem in Acts 2, it says flames of fire appeared over their heads. Was that there to condemn them?
No.
What did that do about them?
It was a sign that they were with the Spirit.
Yeah, it showed their approval and their empowering by the, up until then they were just kind of a cowardly bunch, but once that came on them, they became very powerful, and they were no longer afraid of the Sanhedrin and all that kind of thing. So that fire empowered them. So Kamesh to them meant everlasting life, because we have received the living water, and that gives us that power of the Spirit. So to the pagan world, Kamesh means eat, drink, and be merry, tomorrow we die. To the people who recognize who God is, Kamesh means I've received everlasting life through the living water, and that comes with the power of the Spirit. Same word.
Yeah.
What a difference, though, huh?
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's only the fifth letter. Now you have, or the fifth number, I mean. The fifth letter is He.
Yeah.
It's, in English, it's usually spelled H-E, which they'd say means he, but it's not he. It's He, but it's not hay like a bale of hay. It comes with a little air. You have to say He.
Mm-hmm.
And it's almost like it. If you breathe and take a deep breath, you say, hey. That's hey. And hey means living. It doesn't mean life, it means living. There's a difference between life and living. What's the difference?
Well, life is a noun, living is a adjective.
Well, it would be a verb, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Living.
Yeah.
It's an action. You're doing something. You not only have life, but you're doing it. You're living. And the word, or the letter He, it means breathing or being alive. So it's pictured by a symbol. Can you reach back and grab one of those sheets right off the top there? There's a picture of a He there. That's a He.
He. Yep.
Now, if you took this little first line off, it looks just like a dalet.
Yeah.
And a dalet means a door. But you know, and by picturing it as a dalet, it's like looking at a tent that has a top and one side's closed, but it's open on the other side.
Yeah.
But He is closed on this side, except at the top there's a space. And I said, if you walked into a room that had been closed up for a long time and say, wow, it's stuffy in here, I can hardly breathe, what would you do?
Open a window.
Open a window. So there's the ventilation right up there to let it breathe or let air come in. So He means literally ventilating or breathing. And of course, if somebody was drowned or they thought they'd drowned, you pull them out of the water, the first thing you check is their breathing.
Mm-hmm.
If they're not breathing, what do?
Give them breath.
Yeah, artificial, we call it CPR. The idea is to get them breathing, because without breathing, they're done for. So He means living. It means to not just being alive, but it means actually living or breathing. And so when you look at He, you're looking at what it takes to live the life that you're given. And there's a few notes in there that I made. So the whole concept of that number 5, it can mean works of the Spirit and it all kinds of things, but it can also, there's always a when the Lord does anything, the enemy always fights that, doesn't it?
Yeah.
So I've been teaching for a long time that 5 means conflict.
Mm-hmm.
What's conflict?
Resistance to the way things are.
All right. It's impossible to have a one-sided conflict, isn't it?
Yeah.
Because conflict means something over here is opposing something over here. That's what a conflict is.
Yeah.
It can be anything from a simple argument or discussion, or it can be all-out war. Whatever the extent of it is, it always means one side opposite the other side, doesn't it? That's what conflict is. So here's pictures of conflict, and in the whole scheme of everything that's created, ultimately, what's the conflict?
God versus the evil one.
Yes. God over here, satanic, demonic spirits over here. And, of course, we're right in the middle of it. We're caught into it. But since we are people made of choice, The minute you get in the middle of a conflict, you got to make a decision quick. What do you have to decide?
Which side are you on?
Which side am I going to be on? Am I going to join with this side or that side? You have to. There's no such thing as a they use the word neutral, but neutrality is a luxury that sooner or later you can't hold on to. Because, for example, why is God involved in a conflict? Why? Why is he in it?
So the evil one won't take over?
Well, so what does God want? What's his side represent?
Peace. Goodness.
Okay.
Love.
Why is the demonic spirits involved in conflict?
Hate, destruction, and death.
Yeah. All right. So if God, and we're satisfied, ultimately will win this thing, will he not?
Yes.
When he wins, what will be the situation?
The death and the destruction will be defeated.
Well, that's true, but is that all it will be?
No.
Because defeat means that they no longer exist.
Right.
Well, what does exist then?
The good will triumph.
Yeah.
Love will prevail.
Neutrality means I'm not going to join this side or that side. I'm going to stand in the middle. So if the enemy is defeated and only what God wants is survives, where's the neutral guys going to be? They didn't want to join either side.
There's no neutral.
They can't continue. They made their choice by being neutral. I'm not going to support that, and I'm not going to support that. So where are they going to be when only this side wins? What happens to them?
Left out in the cold, I suppose.
Well, he defeated the cold, didn't he?
Yeah.
So where are they going to go?
But they didn't choose. They didn't choose.
They wanted to be neutral.
All right.
On the other hand, the enemy can't win, but if he could win, if he somehow could, then what would happen to what was good and right? If the enemy could win, what would happen to what is right?
Oh, it would all be destroyed.
But where would the neutral guys be?
They would probably plead their case to the people who win and say, hey, we weren't on their side.
What happened to neutrality? See, neutral is a no-go deal. You can't be you can be neutral temporarily by your own opinion, but ultimately, whatever side
whoever wins, we're going to be with them.
Everything has to be there. But the neutral guy, why would he change? When his very statement of neutrality says, "I will not support this," or "I will not support that." So that's his position. So whichever side wins, he already said, "I'm not going to support him." So what's he going to do? Doesn't support either side. I mean, can you see where neutrality is a no-go deal? Mm-hmm. Temporarily, people can declare neutrality, but ultimately, they have to go somewhere, because you can't stay neutral. Now, as long as the conflict's going, the final results have not yet been determined, have they? At least not from our point of view. So neutrality is kind of open because we don't know who's going to win when you have a contest. But the ending of neutrality comes when somebody wins, doesn't it? Mm-hmm. So neutrality is always temporary. So anyway, the whole idea of number 5 is conflict. God is in conflict with the enemy is in conflict with God, is what it comes down. And we are somewhere in here, and by our choice, we can say we're going to be neutral, but that won't last. We have to decide which side we're going to be on. So, of course, when you have conflict, and the Bible talks a lot about conflict, doesn't it? And I mentioned a few of them in the note. For example, David going after Goliath. What was really happening when David went after Goliath? On the surface, it looked like a young guy attacking a giant. That's what we saw on the surface. But what in reality was happening right there?
God was allowing the little man to triumph. The people who chose God are going to triumph.
Okay, and what was the conflict?
Well, the conflict was bad talking the God of Israel, and using physical ways to overcome other people.
Okay, so Goliath was threatening Saul and his army, wasn't he?
Yeah.
But David did not interpret it that way. What did he say to Goliath? He said something like that. You had defied the God of Israel.
Yeah.
So Goliath wasn't attacking Saul. Who was he attacking?
Attacking the Lord.
Attacking God. Who dares to attack God?
The people who have chosen.
No, not people.
Chosen wrong.
People don't dare.
The demons.
The demons, the satanic power. So Goliath is really a literal, or if so we say, a physical picture of the real demonic spirit that's attacking God.
Yeah.
So the conflict there again is God against Satan, and Satan against God. Now David, of course, is in many times a picture of Yeshua, the Savior. So when Yeshua shows up on the scene, what is he here for?
He's here to save.
How does he go about saving?
Well, he gave himself as a sacrifice, and he also gave people a better way to live.
Well, you remember what shalom means.
The destruction of one who causes havoc.
Yeah. Destruction of the authority that establishes the chaos.
Chaos.
So in the situation with David, Saul, Goliath, Saul is the authority that was causing the chaos, wasn't he?
Yeah.
And so if Saul is really a picture of Satan himself trying to destroy God, is that pretty good what he's doing? Because David said, you defied my God, or the God of Israel. He said, you're not here to defy me, or even to defy King Saul. On the surface, he appeared to be defying Saul. But that's just the surface. Everything's a parable. That's what you'd see outwardly. But underneath the surface, Goliath was really a picture of satanic powers fighting against God himself. So here's David goes out here as a servant. Who is David serving?
Serving God.
Yeah. He said, I was taking care of my father's sheep. Who is his father's sheep anyway?
The people.
Which people?
God's people.
The Lord's people are his father's sheep. So if the Lord's people are his father's sheep, then who is David?
Picture of the Lord.
He's the good shepherd, is he not? Mm-hmm. So his interest is in protecting his sheep. And so he said, as an illustration of this, I was taking care of my father's sheep, and a lion attacked the sheep. What happened?
He defeated the lion.
Or another occasion, a bear attacked the sheep. What does he do?
Defeated
All right.
The bear.
Now, did he say, literally, I killed a lion and I killed a bear.
Said the Lord gave me the power.
Said the Lord gave me the lion and the Lord gave me the bear, and furthermore, he will do what?
He'll give you into my hands.
Who's you?
Goliath.
Yes, who is ultimately Satan himself.
Yeah.
So is David saying, I'm going to kill you?
No.
No. He did say, I will feed you to the birds.
Yeah.
But is he going to feed the living Goliath to the birds?
Mm-hmm.
He's going to feed the dead Goliath to the birds. Because by the time it gets time to feed the birds, what has happened to Goliath?
He's been slain.
By what means?
By his own sword.
Oh,
to his head. And
what?
The stone?
Stone didn't kill Goliath. It physically did. What destroyed the enemy of God?
Okay. The Lord himself.
Yeah.
On the cross.
Yeah. And of course, all this is pictured by the rock that David slung with his sling. Now, did that hit Goliath because David is an expert slinger?
No.
Yeah. Even the most expert slinger doesn't hit every time, does he? He picked up 5 rocks, so that gives him some extras in case he misses 4 times. What do you think?
No, he wasn't. He was.
Is there any chance that rock could miss?
No, not
Why
with the
not?
Lord.
Yeah,
the Lord got
because it was a guided missile. The Spirit of God was guiding that rock, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And so, of course, all of it's a parable. And so I pictured that within He, or number 5, means a conflict. And of course, ultimately, all conflict is between God and satanic powers. People fight each other. We hear about every day in the news, this guy's murdering somebody, something's happening. On the surface, people say, well, that guy there did it to that guy. Yes, on the surface that's true. But what was really happening?
It's that big conflict over.
Yeah, and conflict always
Lord
goes
and the
back to
demon.
God, you know. So, the very beginning of conflict, where did it all start?
Back in the first days.
First read about it, of course, everything was, we never thought of the word conflict until we got to the serpent talking to Eve, and then her influence on Adam. And so in that story, what was the first actual conflict? The first
the conflict of ideas of choosing the lie over the truth.
So who chose what about what?
Adam and Eve chose.
Not Eve. Eve did not.
Adam chose.
Eve was deceived.
Yeah, and Adam did a choice that I'm gonna go the way where I can.
Eve did the wrong thing. There's no doubt about that. But she did it because she was tricked into or deceived. That doesn't make her innocent. Just in legal terms, a lot of cases are stopped because they say he was innocent by what do you say? Innocent due to
ignorance.
Ignorance.
Can they do that?
It's a mental disorder, or something.
Oh yeah.
Innocent due to insanity.
Yeah.
You hear that? Well, if somebody killed somebody and the legalists got him off by being innocent due to insanity.
Yeah.
Well, that doesn't bring the dead guy back to life, does it? I mean,
no.
The crime is done. It may legally get the guy off the hook somewhat, but the fact is the crime was done. So Eve did a crime. Whether or not she understood it or not, or whether she's tricked, doesn't relieve her of what happened. But it takes the the ultimate of the blame went to Adam, didn't it? Because he was not deceived. It says he knew exactly what he was doing. He chose to defy. So the conflict was not really between God and Satan. At least not immediately, not directly between God and Adam, wasn't it? There was a conflict. However, from what we can see, Adam never would have even thought of it had it not been for the influence of Satan, would he not?
Right.
So somehow Satan comes in here and influences him. They're about ready to pour some coffee.
Yeah.
I got a cup right here.
And guess what else I have today?
Hopefully some banana bread or something.
That's exactly
Oh,
what
wow. You made my evening. Well, how about a cup of coffee to start with? Oh, you got liquid cream.
Is that enough?
Yeah, I think so. If it didn't, I always wish it would have been.
Yeah. Okay.
So you had another story of conflict was
Yeah, there you go.
the story of the 5 foolish virgins and the 5 wise virgins. Remember that story?
Yes, sir.
What was going on there?
Well, there was a wedding in preparation. It wasn't full scale yet. It was just in the early stages.
What do you know about those ancient Hebrew weddings? I guess to some degree they still do it, but
They were blowout. They were a big deal.
yeah, how'd it work? Give us a picture of one.
Well, the bride would go off and get prepared.
Well, you're not starting at the beginning.
Okay.
How does it start?
With a betrothal.
Okay. How'd that come about?
Probably by setup.
Well, who set it up?
The moms and dads.
No, not the mom and dad.
The matchmaker.
The father.
Okay, the father.
Father set the wedding up. Okay, so he picks out a bride for some. Remember in the story of Abraham? Abraham sent his servant.
I thought you were going to say the fiddler on the roof.
Well, that's pretty close too.
Yeah.
But Abraham sent a servant back to the old country to get a bride for son Isaac, right?
Right.
All right, so he's the father. What did Sarah have to do with it?
There you go. Didn't have anything to do with
Nothing.
it.
Is this already sliced?
It is a slice, so take that top piece off the top.
Okay.
There you go.
So and we don't know much else about it, whether he discussed it with her or anything like that. But there's no evidence that her influence had anything to do with it, does it?
Right.
The father did it. Okay, so the father, and in Abraham's case, he sent a servant to go find the bride. But the servant, what's he doing?
I'm lost. I got caught up in banana bread. The servant of...
Abraham sent a servant to get a bride. So you look at it very carefully. Now, what is that servant doing?
He's doing the matchmaking? He's looking for a good prize.
That's true. Why?
He wants the very best.
Why is he even doing it?
Because he was told to.
Who told him to do it?
The master.
All right, so what's the servant doing?
What his master told him to
He's
do.
doing the will of the master, is it not? All right. And what he's doing as the will of the master is finding a bride for the master's son. Is it to satisfy the desires of the servant?
No. Satisfy the desires of the master.
So the first part of the wedding is a selection of a bride based on the will of the master, right? The servant is just a servant. He's just doing it. He's the guy that does it, but he's not doing his own will. He's not doing what he wants to do. He's doing what the master's going to do. So if you think about it, it doesn't much matter what the servant thinks, does it?
Right.
He's doing what the master sent him to do. So the first part of any wedding, before anything can happen, the father has to want a bride for his daughter, or his son, and some means is chosen to find that one. But it all has to do with what the father wants. Okay, so after he's found a bride, or not a bride, but well, I guess you call her a bride.
Yeah.
Haven't been married yet, but the one he's going to go. Then what happened?
Well, they make a proposal to the bride's father. Cut a deal, right?
Okay.
You want your other piece now?
Yeah. They're going to, there's usually a price for the bride, right?
Right.
The father pays for it. It has to be agreed on by whoever has charge of the bride.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So that gets done. Then what?
I did kind of jump over a bunch of stuff, didn't I? Well, after that, I guess they determine a plan to make it happen.
Okay, now, it doesn't give too terribly much detail about exactly what they did, but it's not like a modern American wedding where they just make a decision, they hop over there and pay some preacher $10 to say a few words, and
Yeah.
there it goes. Much more than that, isn't it, in the ancient Hebrew wedding? So, once it's all been set up and decided, and they have their what's called a betrothal, what does that mean?
It's we would call it an engagement, right?
Sort yeah. It's binding, though, isn't it?
Was to them.
Yeah. And but they don't immediately become married. Immediately, not right away, do they?
Right.
Or what they do?
Well, they're getting the house ready, probably.
They? Who's they?
The groom's getting his house.
The groom
ready.
goes back to his father's place and prepares a place for him and the bride. Now, whether it's in the house of the father or whatever, I don't know, but it's property of his father. All right? So, depending on the situation, how long does it take him to do that?
I guess it's depending on the situation.
Yeah, does it say anywhere how long it takes?
No.
There is a length of time. In fact, it implies that nobody knows for sure how long it'll take, does it?
Right.
But while
This is where the mystery of the parable comes
yes,
in.
while he's gone off to make these preparations, and the Lord did say to his disciples, I'm going to prepare a place for you. How long will it take him to do that?
Don't know.
He's been gone now for 2,000 years that we know of, literally.
Yeah.
So it must be quite a place he's working on. But, we don't want to get silly about that. But what he was doing was preparing a place. And who would decide when it's finished or when it's ready or when it's completed, whatever he's going to prepare?
The father?
The father would. He's in charge of everything. And so at whatever time it's finally decided by the father that everything is ready now, it's complete, it's exactly the way it ought to be, this will be honorable to the father and everything. Then what happens?
Well, they go get the bride.
They? Who's they?
The groom goes gets the bride.
Yes. He would probably have servants with him, too, called friends of the bridegroom.
Mm-hmm.
The Lord said, I'm going to prepare a place for you. And when I'm done, when it's all finished, I will come back for you. And it refers to even angels coming and so on. So the groom then comes back for the bride. Does anyone know when he will get there?
No.
But the bride's attendants, perhaps mentioned by the virgins that are mentioned there, a virgin would be a young lady who has not been married yet, wouldn't it?
Right.
In our modern weddings, they have these bridesmaids and stuff. Most of that's a bunch of foolishness that people have done with little thought about what it really represents. It's just tradition, most of it, isn't it? And some of them try to make it as elaborate as they can and make it look impressive. Some of these brides' dresses and stuff are just ridiculous, you know, some of them. But
yeah.
Anyway, so the bride, now, she may have been a young gal from Nazareth or from someplace. In her younger years, you'd see her helping with the gardening or with the animals or carrying water or whatever they did, you know. She would just look like a young gal. In an ordinary day's work, she'd just be out there in the field working. Maybe she's tramping out grape juice or something. Who knows what she's doing? What would she look like ordinarily?
Working girl.
Yeah, just like any other. Nothing particular about her. But now she's being prepared to meet the bridegroom. So in that preparation, there's going to be a lot of stuff going on in there. Mm-hmm. She's going to be clothed in some kind of a appropriate outfit, anointed with spices and all kinds of stuff, you know, perfumes and things like that.
Dressed like she never dressed before.
Yeah. And, of course, they don't know when the groom will come back, but they may have some general idea because they can't just spend a year sitting around waiting for the groom. They got a life to live. But whenever it would be a expected time, they would get ready for the groom to come. And of course, they don't know whether he'll come in the daytime or at night, do they?
Right.
So what did they do that they don't know?
Well, they waited.
Well, and waited how?
Expectantly. Like it's going to happen at any minute.
So whatever it would take for whatever the situation was, did they know it would be at night?
No.
No, they don't know that. But if it is, they should be ready.
Right.
Now, of course, look at here. We look around here. What do we care if it's nighttime? We got lights everywhere.
That's right.
But you go to old Israel in the early days, you go out there at night, what's it look like?
Dark.
Pitch black. There's no light anywhere. Maybe a little tiny lamp somewhere somebody might have. But mostly it's just dark. So, and when the bridegroom would come back, there would be some kind of a trumpet blowing or some kind of announcement that he's coming. He wouldn't just walk in on the crowd all of a sudden. There would be a signal of some sort. I'm guessing a shofar or something like blowing. Because it does say the Lord would come with the sound of the shofar, does he not? So they would blow a shofar at whatever time he's coming. Now, these young gals that were to meet him would have to be ready for whenever he might come. If he were to come in the middle of the day, they wouldn't need their lamps, would they? But they don't know that. He might come at night, so they got lamps ready. Do they light the lamps all the time they're waiting?
Probably not.
No. They wouldn't light them because they'd just burn up their oil. But they'd be ready to at whatever time was required. So, you know the story. There was 10 of them altogether in that case.
Yeah. 5 of each. 5 foolish, 5.
Yeah. Why were the ones called foolish? Does that mean they were bad? They were no good, or what's going on? Why did he call them foolish?
Kind of like the Proverbs 7 dude. Didn't know any better.
What do you mean he didn't know any better?
Well, They didn't prepare. They weren't ready. That was what their attribution of foolishness was.
Well, why weren't they ready?
They didn't count the cost. They didn't prepare for the things that they couldn't see.
Yeah, now, or whatever, they didn't take it very seriously anyway, did they?
Right.
Do you think they knew what the rules were and how you're supposed to do it?
Yeah, but they were probably living more in the moment than preparing.
And I think they knew what was expected. I mean, these are not things that just, I mean, they've been to weddings before. It's not the first one they'd ever go to. And even if it was, some rabbi or somebody would instruct them as to what they should do. They would know what to do. Then why wouldn't they do it?
Because they were foolish. And they weren't going to listen to somebody else's words.
Well, that's true, but why? Why wouldn't they live? Why wouldn't they do what they knew they should do? The Lord says to his people, I'm going away to prepare a place for you. When I've got it, I will come back for you.
Mm-hmm.
Is everybody ready for that?
No.
Why not? Does everybody, I'm talking about the Lord's people, do they know that they're supposed to be ready?
Yeah.
Then why don't they do it?
They don't believe him. They don't take it seriously.
They don't take it serious, and everybody does something. What do people do? What does everybody in the whole world do?
What they want to do.
What they want to do. Isn't that it?
Yeah, it's true.
So then why don't they get ready for the Lord?
Because they're doing what they want.
There's other things they want more.
Yeah.
Or it's more important to them. Or perhaps even more real. They may say, oh, I believe this, I believe that, but, you know, I believe in going to the store more than I believe that the Lord is coming. That it's a lot of this thing we call religion is a claim that doesn't have any real backing in it. I mean, it's just based on a false idea that, yeah, this is what we believe, but then, you know, somebody said, do you believe the Bible? Oh, yeah. Do you believe every word of it? Yes, I do. Do you do every word of it? Well, no. Well, then you don't believe every word of it, do you? Because you do what you believe. Mm-hmm. If you don't do it, then why not? Because you claim you believe it, but it's not serious enough to you to do anything about it. So it comes out of that. So the foolish one, you know, in the Proverbs, the word fool in our Western culture means someone with a low IQ. It's stupid.
Mm-hmm.
But then, of course, in Hebrew, it doesn't mean that. Yeah, fool doesn't mean you have no brains. A rocket scientist could know how to fire a rocket to Mars and how to control it and still be a fool. Because a fool had nothing to do with mental ability. A fool has to do with an attitude toward God, doesn't it? That's what it comes to. The fool says what?
In his heart there is no God.
There's no God, so I'm not going to recognize God. But what I will recognize, I'll recognize science, I'll recognize education, I'll recognize medics, I'll recognize health, I'll recognize football players, I'll recognize politicians, military power, anything under the sun, but I will not recognize God. And you could be a IQ of 500, but as far as God is concerned, if you have no recognition of God, the rest of it means nothing, does it? So these foolish virgins, they were there because the religious system required it, and they were going to do the religious thing. But their heart attitude was, it's too much trouble to go to all this just for the possibility that a groom might show up. They really didn't expect much to happen, did they? But so, of course, the Lord it's a parable. It's not an actual story of a real event that happened. Oh, it could have been, but it's mainly just an illustration. So anyway, they're all sitting out there waiting for the groom, right? And the the wise ones, what are they doing?
They're waiting.
What's the difference between what they're waiting is and the waiting of the foolish one?
They were prepared. They were prepared for any of the scenarios.
Why? Why were they?
Because they took it seriously.
They took it seriously. They believed it will really happen, and they wanted to be ready for when it did. And so what is their heart attitude? What was it they really wanted? Remember, it's a story of a wedding.
To enjoy the wedding.
Well...
To honor the bride and groom. To honor the father.
Yes. Can you see that?
Yeah.
They really wanted to honor the father. In fact...
Is there a tie into John chapter 2?
I wouldn't be surprised. But think about this.
Yeah.
Their desire to honor the father made everything about the wedding become important to them, didn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And it all went back to honoring the father. Every little aspect of it went to honoring the father. All right? So, and they meant it. That's what they wanted. They didn't want it for their own satisfaction. They didn't want it so they'd be recognized or in some way complimented by it. Their heart desire was they wanted to honor the father of this groom, and by honoring that, they're also honoring the groom. You know, the Lord says, if you love me, you love the Father, and if you don't love me, you don't love the Father. He always puts it back to the Father, doesn't he?
Mm-hmm.
So those first five, the ones that were called wise. Now, if fool means a bad attitude toward God, then what does wise mean?
Good attitude toward God.
So neither one of them has anything to do with mental ability. A guy could be a mental imbecile. Could he still be wise in the view of that?
Yeah.
Or a guy could be a brilliant scientist and he's a fool if he doesn't recognize who God is, doesn't he? So everything has to do with the willingness to recognize the Father and what goes to him. So here's these wise ones, and they knew, we don't know what time the groom will come, but if he happens to come in the dark, we want to be ready for that in order that we will not dishonor the Father.
Mm-hmm.
All right, so they're ready for that. Now the others, they, who picked those other gals, the foolish ones, to even be part of that wedding? Who let them be part of it?
Well, the Father.
Mm-hmm. Now the Father wanted all of them to be wise, didn't he?
Right.
Then why aren't they all wise?
Because they have a choice.
They have a choice. God never forces you to be right.
Right.
He wants you to be right. He provides everything for you to learn. He teaches you how to be right. The Torah instructs you, shows you what to do, and he provides for you what you need. But it comes back down to this. What do you want? You know, when you come to it, he doesn't make you do anything. So here they are. Now they're if you looked at them, let's say it was 4 o'clock in the afternoon, it's not dark yet, but here's 10 young virgins out there. They've all got lamps with them, don't they?
Yeah.
Every one of them does. Whatever the wedding dress was correct, would they all be dressed like that?
Mm-hmm.
Could you tell which ones were foolish and which ones were wise looking at them?
Probably not.
They all look just like they should. They're all dressed up. They've all got their whatever they do to look appropriate. And they're in the right place and everything. And they're waiting. And then finally it says about midnight, the signal came, midnight. And that's interesting, you know. What is about midnight?
Well, on our clock, it's 12 o'clock.
Yeah, but so what? What's important about midnight?
Well, on our clock, it's the start of a new day. But for midnight means it's dark already.
How dark is it?
It's the darkest it's going to get.
It's the darkest it can possibly be. The time you'd think, the most unlikely time to have a celebration of
Yeah.
joy and gladness
That's
and
true.
glory and everything else. But the Lord says, at a time when you least expect Him, He will come. Least. So midnight would be
You wouldn't expect
the
it.
last possible thing. Why would He come at midnight, for crying out loud? You know, wouldn't you think you'd want Him to at the middle of the day when everything would be bright and sunny and you go out and celebrate in the light? But He comes at the darkest time of the night, the least time you'd ever expect. But nevertheless, that's when it says He came. The cry rose up, and the cry, you know, He said a cry rose up. And I'm just guessing at this, but they would sound a shofar. And when the shofar sounded, what would the people all do?
Start cheering?
I think so. The cry would have rose up, He's coming, He's coming, here He comes, you know, and all
start
this kind of,
roaring.
I'm going to turn the heater on, okay?
You know what? I need to take a break.
So we were talking about this wedding thing, and, you know, of course, you had the 5 foolish ones who were not prepared because they chose other things more important to them than being ready for this. So, of course, it was all over the idea of conflict. And I don't think that the Lord gave that parable in order to threaten anybody with being condemned. But I think He was saying, when people don't have an attitude of wanting to honor the Father by being prepared, as He said, they're just taking that position that is of the world, and it's like thinking, I don't need to worry about being exactly right. But I'm going to be religious. I'll do my things and make it look good and everything else. But I think what his purpose of the parable was not to threaten anybody, but just to say, you don't want to be like this. This isn't where you want to live. And I'm thinking that why did He tell people all these things anyway? Is to scare them or to threaten them, or what's the whole purpose of Him teaching anything to anybody?
Because He loves them.
Yeah. And so the purpose of the parable is to prevent them from getting into that danger, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
It's kind of like a warning sign. You come to any place where some sort of a warning. Maybe you just come to a railroad crossing, there's a signal there. That's not to threaten you. It's just to prevent you from getting into danger. But the signal actually says, if you disobey or disregard this signal, you're in a very dangerous position. Mm-hmm. And I don't want you to be in that, so pay attention to the signal. So I'm thinking that those parables are to really keep people out of danger rather than to threaten what will happen if they do go in. Mm-hmm. But, you know, in order to make them realize there is a danger, you got to show what would happen if this is where you're going to end up, you know. So I don't want anybody to think that just because people are acting religiously without a great deal of seriousness that they're automatically condemned or anything, but they're in a dangerous position, is what he's saying. He doesn't want them to be that way. So, but again, of course, it all doesn't come down to choice. So if a proper influence is to tell you, if you walk past that guardrail, you're going to be in danger, why would they tell anybody that?
Don't want them to be in danger.
Don't want you to be in danger. So if you insist on doing it, well, then look out. But I don't want you to do that. So, but it still comes back to choice, you know. What if you refuse to listen? You won't. And if someone is in that position of foolishness like that, but then they hear that parable, they're immediately being offered an opportunity to come out of that bad danger, aren't they?
Mm-hmm.
So along with the parable actually comes an invitation to escape the danger and be into safety. And so I think that there's a danger of a possibility of thinking that the Lord is threatening them or saying certain people are hopeless because they do this, you know. But he's really saying, the only reason I'm telling you that is because I want them to have that hope. So the hope is there for them. And, you know, it talks about, where is it in Ezekiel, where it talks about the watchman on the wall?
Yeah.
Where he says, here comes
Jeremiah. No, it's Ezekiel.
I think so, yeah. Anyway, where he says, here an enemy comes and the watchman sees him coming and he sounds a warning. Well, what's the purpose of the warning?
Protect people.
Yeah, so that they'd be ready to counter the effect of the enemy. And if he sounds a warning and they don't listen to the warning, well, they're going to be overthrown, but the watchman be cleared. He did what he was told to do. On the other hand, if he doesn't bother to warn them, the enemy will destroy him, but he'll get the blame for it because he didn't warn them. So he comes out of this, the idea of having a watchman there and what he's supposed to do is so the enemy will not overcome his people, you know. So the Lord says, I'm telling you these parables because the enemy is out there. He wants to wreck you. And if you continue like you are, the enemy will overthrow you. But I'm giving you this parable so that you'll be ready for that. It won't happen. So the goal of every parable is to bring salvation, isn't it?
Yeah.
And so anyway, so the conflict, and all started with the number 5 being conflict. God is in a conflict, whether we believe it or not, or whether we like it or not. There is a conflict, isn't there?
Yeah.
And people can write all say, well, it's because we need better education. How many times do you hear that?
Yeah.
Or because we got the wrong political party in, or something. We need better weapons for our military. And there may be some truth in some of that, but the real conflict is between demonic powers and God and demonic powers, and we're being caught right in the middle of it, and we have to make a choice. And so every parable is to encourage you to make the proper choice, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
And but the conflict's there. What if people don't believe there's conflict? Doesn't make a difference. There is anyway. And you know, so anyway, that's kind of what I was getting from the number 5 and the 5th letter. You know, it's it comes down to number 5 is telling us we're in a position where we have to make choices, and they better be the right choice, huh?
Yeah.
So,
Jim, I'm pretty wore out tonight.